We need to do, it's Christmas time, is thank the three wise men of Christmas, Chris Bowen, Tony Burke and Jim Chalmers. Come the next election, all Peter Dutton has to stand up and say is,
Tell me,
Mr. Albanese,
would you like to see your mother and father again?
Yes.
Together, we can bring them back.
Peter Dutton will say, I seek to bring people together.
Let's take a look at Labor's spending, because the International Monetary Fund is warning the Albanese government to curb spending over concerns about inflation and interest rates. The IMF has thrown its support behind the Reserve Bank's restrictive monetary stance, labelling it appropriate, and is calling for support with fiscal policy that avoids an expansionary stance. Now, the central bank kept rates steady at a 13-year high of 4.35% at its December meeting. And the warning from the IMF comes after a mid-year budget update from Treasurer Jim Chalmers that revealed a projected $27 billion deficit.
Well, they're obviously not the primary focus or the primary concern of what we're doing here. We're trying to provide cost of living pressure throughout Middle Australia.
It's what Labor governments do.
They can't really seem to get their spending under control.
if the International Monetary Fund needs to say it, when they've been hearing it from every economist and the RBA for the last 2.5 years, 3 years. I give up. They're not going to. See, what we need to do, it's Christmas time, is thank the three wise men of Christmas, Chris Bowen, Tony Burke and Jim Chalmers. Chris Bowen, because he was going to reduce your power bill by $275, and instead it went up by $1,000.
Because he made things up as he went. I mean, this is a rolling farce of an alleged policy. It's actually just a scam.
Tony Burke, when he was in industrial relations, made sure the unions had more power, making life more difficult and everything more expensive for small and middle-sized businesses, just harder for everyone, and they passed the costs on to you.
But let's remember two things. One,
I'm an idiot.
But secondly,
I'm a much bigger idiot.
And then we had Jim Chalmers, who's
A much bigger idiot.
whose approach to everything is the one that troubles the IMF. You just throw money at everything. What we're experiencing now, and what you experience when you try to buy stuff for Christmas, it's the hard landing we weren't supposed to have. This is the hard landing that we were promised, and it's happening now, which is why
Australians are really doing it tough, and we need a better government. I don't just speak in controlled environments. I get out there and talk with people on the ground, in the supermarkets, across our shopping centres, in our main streets.
which is why you're having half a ham instead of a full leg.
Well,
of
that's
ham
what's
this
happening.
Christmas.
Australians are certainly feeling the pinch this Christmas, and many are said to be cutting back on buying large legs of ham for Christmas and are instead opting for half a leg instead as they do what they can in this cost of living crisis. Food company Primo Foods says that consumers have been searching for value in the lead up to Christmas. Aldi has been performing really well, and consumers are spending less time dining out and more time gathering at home. Does this surprise you, Freya?
Not really. As Kel said, I think households really are doing it tough. Food has gone up by 10% since the last election, and it is an absolute train wreck for Labor. And you notice they have repeatedly tried to blame inflation on Donald Trump, on Ukraine, on Netanyahu, on
Santa,
on
Peter Dutton,
on
Alan Joyce,
on
travelling in the car.
on anyone but themselves. And most recently, their newest scapegoat has been the RBA. Oh, it's all the RBA's fault. They're the ones messing around with monetary policy and causing this all to go awry. But that is factually untrue. They have added $347 billion in extra spending since the election. That equates to $33,000 per household. Do you feel like you're getting an extra $33,000 in value from the government? I certainly do not.
But Albo, of course, will tell you
$1. And I want Australian parents and families to know that the government has your back.
All that money is doing is fueling inflation. And the inflation we're seeing now, you've also got to remember, there's a lag between when the government spends money and when we actually see that it resulting in inflation. They have now been in for 2.5 years. That is
a natural disaster on a catastrophic scale, devastating communities with a force that still has the power to shock.
for 2.5 years.
Survivors have lived with the weight of loss and the pain of memories.
And that's something that I'm very proud of my party
for having created.
They have now been in for 2.5 years.
That is about the perfect amount of time to actually see the true impact of government spending flow through the economy and result in inflation.
His true character has shone through for all Australians to see. He is a weak and impotent Prime Minister.
And what are we seeing? Inflation is remaining too high. Core inflation, the RBA's preferred measure, much too high, out of the 2 to 3% band. And we know this is an Australian problem because it is a homegrown inflation problem. Inflation on products produced and consumed here is higher than inflation on products we're importing from overseas. So we know this is an Australian problem. We know that this is a result of government spending.
Reach for the stars.
Fortunately, we know this government will look for anyone to blame but themselves.
And it's sad, Kel, isn't it, when we're really seeing this play out at Christmas time and people have to cut back?
Well, they're maxing their credit cards. What people know is if we're going to have Christmas this year, come January, we will, and February, because we'll still be suffering the pain then, they max their credit cards is what people do, because you've got to give the family Christmas and you've got to give the little kids Christmas, and so people do that. Don't you reckon, Gabrielle, come the next election, all Peter Dutton has to stand up and say is, do you feel better off now than 3 years ago? And he's got a one.
Well, absolutely. That's what Trump said, and that certainly helped him get elected. But he makes a point. It's felt right here in Australia, and I think everyone can relate to that. I don't know how many people are better off right now than they were 3-4 years ago. Please let me know.
We're going to have a show of hands.
Of course, I am much better off. As a Prime Minister, I earn a good income.
We're going to have a show of hands. Oh, nobody's better off than they were 3 years ago.
No one. It's sad, isn't it?